Lisbon, Portugal, the heart of Europe's diplomacy, shifted momentarily to the Portuguese capital today, where European Council President Antonio Costa addressed one of the most pressing crises of our time, the ongoing war in Ukraine. With the EU adjusting its rhetoric, Costa made a forceful appeal. The language of diplomacy must match the urgency of lives being lost on the battlefield. In front of banners carrying the message, "Together Stronger," Costa's words struck a careful balance between unity, resolve, and political signalling. His message was not only directed at Europeans, but at allies across the Atlantic, including US President Donald Trump. Walking to the podium, Costa carried more than a speech. He carried the weight of Europe's position in a conflict that has reshaped global politics. The European Union, he emphasized, must remain the largest pillar of both military and humanitarian support for Ukraine. The Ukrainian armed forces will be the first line of defense. That is why we must enhance, reinforce, and unblock our military support to Ukraine. The European Union is already the biggest provider of military and economic support. Costa reminded the audience that the EU has already committed more than any other bloc to keeping Ukraine armed and financed. But his emphasis on unblocking support hinted at internal European struggles, debates over weapons shipments, funding delays, and political resistance from certain capitals. Our top priority must be to stop the killings. Whether we call it a ceasefire or a truce is a secondary. What matters is that we maintain Russia through sanctions if Russia does not comply. These remarks mark a deliberate shift in Europe's messaging. Once calling explicitly for a ceasefire, EU officials are now framing the demand in starker moral terms: stop the killing. This semantic adjustment, sources say, is designed to resonate with Washington and strengthen the EU's voice as Trump weighs his next steps in transatlantic diplomacy. Ukraine's future is not only about strong security guarantees and their fighting for a potential peace deal with Russia, but also about its European path. This is why we must move forward with the enlargement process. Costa underscored that Ukraine's future is not confined to battlefields or negotiations. Instead, he tied it directly to the EU's enlargement process, signaling that Kyiv's long-desired path toward full European membership must remain a political priority. For Ukraine, this serves as both reassurance and a challenge where reforms must continue even under fire. We are working hand in hand with the United States. Their commitment to participate in the security guarantees with the Europeans and other like-minded countries is a very important step, a very welcome step. The European Union will do its part. His remarks confirmed Europe's deep reliance on American partnership. As Washington drafts possible frameworks for security guarantees, Costa's words framed the transatlantic bond not as optional, but as essential for any meaningful deal to hold. Europe, he said, is ready to do its share. Behind Costa's remarks lies a calculated diplomatic strategy. For months, European leaders have struggled with how to frame the war: too soft, and Moscow senses weakness; too rigid, and allies risk divisions. By stripping the language of ceasefire and focusing instead on the act of killing itself, the EU aims to present a message that is morally unambiguous and politically unifying. It is, at its core, a human appeal: stop the loss of life. This message resonates strongly in Ukraine, where months of grinding battles have left cities shattered and families displaced. Ukrainian officials, while cautious about talk of truces, welcome Europe's ongoing support. For them, Costa's pledge to enhance and reinforce aid is more than symbolic. It is existential. Without Europe's weapons, funds, and sanctions enforcement, Ukraine's position would weaken rapidly. Yet Costa's remarks were also carefully tuned for Washington's ears. President Trump has signaled openness to reshaping US commitments abroad, and Europeans fear that without alignment, sanctions and aid packages could falter. By framing the EU as already the biggest provider, Costa was making a case. Europe is not merely following Washington's lead, but standing as a co-equal partner. Internally, however, Europe faces challenges. Hungary and Slovakia have repeatedly slowed sanctions decisions. Public opinion is mixed in countries facing economic strain. Costa's Lisbon statement, therefore, was not just foreign policy. It was also an attempt to solidify unity within the EU itself. The message: Europe must move forward together or risk losing credibility in the eyes of both allies and adversaries. Perhaps most significant was Costa's linkage of the war to enlargement. By explicitly saying Ukraine's future is also about its European path, he placed Kyiv's EU membership back on the agenda. This is not merely symbolic. Enlargement has historically reshaped the EU, from post-Cold War integration of Eastern Europe to the current debates over admitting the Western Balkans. Now, Ukraine's membership could become both a reward for its struggle and a geopolitical shield against future Russian aggression. In linking enlargement with security guarantees, Costa also hinted at a broader vision, a Europe more deeply tied to the United States, yet more capable of acting independently. His words acknowledged reality. Ukraine cannot stand alone, and Europe cannot promise security without American backing. But they also reflected ambition, a Europe willing to step up as a decisive player, not a bystander. As Costa exited the hall, the message lingered: stop the killings, in a war measured not just by territory gained or lost, but by lives cut short. The European Union is recalibrating how it speaks and acts. The challenge now is whether words can be matched with sustained action, sanctions that bite, aid that arrives on time, and unity that withstands political storms. From Lisbon to Washington, from Kyiv to Brussels, the appeal is the same. Diplomacy, strategy, and politics must serve a single urgent priority: to end the bloodshed in Ukraine. Antonio Costa has placed that call at the top of Europe's agenda. The question now is whether the world will listen.
The Ukrainian armed forces will be the first line of defense. That is why we must enhance, reinforce, and unblock our military support to Ukraine. The European Union is already the biggest provider of military and economic support. Our top priority must be to stop the killings. Whether we call it a ceasefire or a truce is a secondary. What matters is that we maintain pressure through sanctions if Russia does not comply. Ukraine's future is not only about strong security guarantees underpinning a potential peace deal with Russia, but also about its European path. This is why we must move forward with the enlargement process. We are working hand in hand with the United States. Their commitment to participate in the security guarantees with the Europeans and other like-minded countries is a very important step, a very welcome step. The European Union will do its part.